Well, it's time for world politics, and we've got all kinds of interesting things to talk about on the political land front and all along those lines, or the political landscape, I should say, and all in that kind of way. And of course, I've got Rick Rosner with me, and I've also got definitely Irene Parker, and I've also got Nick Palveda, one of the founders of the network here as well. And of course, there's a lot of military conflicts that are going on that is playing a role in what's happening in the political landscape. So we've got a Russian missile that has definitely strike that killed more than 50 people and wounded over 200 in the Ukrainian city of Poltavia and all along those lines. And definitely that's something that is on that political front. And Netanyahu has asked Israelis for forgiveness over the hostage deaths and everything. And John McCain's son is decrying Trump's appearance at Arlington as a violation that turned a cemetery into a campaign backdrop. So there's all kinds of things that are happening on the political land front, including something that I know that Nick will probably be interested in. So I'm here to bring in my panelists and see what they've got to say about a number of these things on the political landscape and all along those lines. Because I know one thing that Nick is oftentimes concerned about is what is going on with our spies and all along those lines. So apparently Linda's son, a former Kathy Huckle aide, has been accused of scheming to advance the interest in China. So apparently this former aide to the New York governor is charged with acting as an agent of the Chinese government. So apparently there is things in that space because the Huckle aide is charged with taking money, travel, and poultry to help China. So just wondering what y'all's thoughts are about this and whether we need to be concerned about spies in our midst, because I do know that that's
always. This is nothing new. We had a spy scandal back in 1789. It did so, and Russia and China and Israel often will send over like attractive people, or they'll compromise people with a gripe. And if you watch the show The Americans or any spy show, this is nothing new.
Well, he says nothing new, but apparently he's also playing into the conversation around on Trump and everything, because apparently House Democrats are asking Trump if he illegally accepted $10 million from Egypt. So this is something that's going on. So this is something else that is taking place. So a recent Washington Post article detailed a now closed Justice Department investigation spurred by intelligence from 2000.
That allegedly happened in 2016. That allegedly happened in 2016, just before the election that made him president. And then the investigation went on for 3 years until Bill Barr, Trump's attorney general, shut it down.
Well, one of the problems that we have in this country is we're very porous because of the freedom of speech, the freedoms we have, allowing other countries and people to come in and do some nefarious things. Now, here's a recent thing. I just was in my meeting with the National Pension Group earlier. You may be aware of or may not. FinCEN is going to require the disclosure of ultimate beneficial owners of small companies by December 1st, or they're going to face like heavy fines, $500 a day. Now, this is the first time a federal agency has said, we want to know who owns your small company. Now, since I own a lot of small companies and I'm a shareholder of a lot of them, one thing I know after filling out all the forms with the Secretary of State, you should disclose who the officers, directors, but not the owners. The person is the ultimate beneficial owner. So this time, I'm going to have to start sending in disclosures to a federal agency. Yes, I own the company. But now here's the reason for that rule. The reason is quite simple. If somebody came to me as an attorney, could you set up a company for me? Yes, I can. I'm Chinese. I don't want anyone to know the owner. Don't worry about it. They won't know. I keep it in my corporate book. Unless you're sued on discovery, no one will know. And let's go start buying companies in the United States that have proprietary information, and or real estate, and or whatever. The federal government and the state governments have no control whatsoever about this. Now, the funny thing about FinCEN, There was a federal court that already struck it down, but the rest of the federal courts have not said anything. I got to go check it because by December 1st, we got to make decisions. Are we going to file or not? We're going to file for all our companies. But this is a problem in our system. It's a very poor system. Same with the visa rules. Everybody goes, oh, the immigrants, they're coming through the border. Most immigrants that are illegal overstay their visas. That's the reason they're illegal. They don't come across the border. Neither party seems to have a grasp on the realities of what happens in immigration. They really need to go hire a good immigration attorney who can tell them, oh, yes, we have a lot of illegal immigrants. Well, how are they illegal? They get a visa, they come to the United States, and then they throw the visa away and they just stay here. And that's
only there a way to keep track of them through some electronic device that they checked in with hundreds of times a day.
Yeah, there are different solutions to the problem.
Everybody's got a cell phone.
Right. You're right.
Got a cell phone. They say our cell
solutions
phones
to the
are
problem,
constantly being monitored and everything. But speaking of being constantly monitored, one of the things that came up politically really quickly and everything, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this because you are a big fan of social media and all of that, Rick. But apparently the Philadelphia Eagles, which is a major sports team and everything, had a street poster out there, and apparently it was a street poster by a well-known street artist and everything endorsing Kamala Harris, but now they are saying that that is a counterfeit political ad because the Philadelphia Eagles apparently were not backing Kamala, and it was a counterfeit political ad.
There are 9 weeks to go till the election, and there's fake stuff flying around all over the place. Last night, somebody, the PGA Tour website, except they misspelled tour, hoping you wouldn't notice, put up a fake Tiger Woods quote attacking Kamala Harris. They got more than 4 million views. A lot of people fell for it. This garbage there's going to be more of it. There's already more of it than ever before. It's easy to do.
Yeah, well, and to give you an idea, Mark, the clickbait that's out there, there was Facebook is notorious for putting fake stuff on their website. Now they shut down our network and we're legitimate. They've shut us down a couple times. We keep bringing ourselves back up, but we're legitimate. But let me tell you, Facebook is the worst for false information. Here was the latest clickbait. Sasha will appreciate it because he's a chess player. They said Magnus Carlsen has died. The chess community is in mourning. And the minute I heard that, I'm going like, he died? Are you kidding me? Wait a minute, it came from Facebook. Let me go fact check it. Magnus Carlsen didn't die. What was this Facebook post all about? It's Facebook clickbait. And the thing is, they do it all the time. If you want to find false information, go to social media. They have plenty of it.
Twitter,
not your show, Irene.
Twitter, now X, is now owned by a guy who is squarely in Trump's corner and is promoting all sorts of Trump propaganda and crazy BS, and he's got an AI image generator which he used to generate an image of somebody who was supposed to be Kamala Harris, looked more like Eva Longoria dressed as a communist, and he put it up as if it was some real picture of her. There's a crazy amount of junk.
Yeah, and currently we do not broadcast through Twitter or X. Mark, is that correct?
That's correct, because they want us to be
suspended our relationship.
They want us to have some sort of verification that we do not have and everything. So they want you to have like a premium account. So because of that premium account, we do not advertise or
right. Yeah. So what we did with Twitter is we basically we suspended Twitter. And part of the reason I didn't want to pay for that is I never used it anyway. I didn't like their service. The only one I know who liked it was Rick. And the thing is, and you don't have a premium account, so I don't know how you can.
No, because I don't want to pay them $96 a year either.
I don't think they're worth anything. So we do not broadcast through Twitter. We broadcast through Facebook. People are watching us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube. We have our own Roku channel, 4 Roku channels. We're on Amazon, but not Twitter, now X. So the thing is, we basically took Twitter off.
But Nick, speaking of that and everything, and I do want to get to Irene, but before I get to Irene, I know that one of the things that I know that Sasha has been concerned about, and he's brought it up on a number of shows, is what's going to happen when the kids come back to school. And apparently we now know, because apparently some anti-Israel protesters swarmed Columbia University as classes were kicking off, and pro-Palestinian protests resumed at Columbia University with calls for strikes as the semester begins. So I guess they want to strike against Israel and call a strike from as students and everything. And apparently Barnard College is also seeing pro-Palestinian protests on the first day of fall classes. I don't know of any here in North Carolina where we are as of yet. That doesn't mean that there won't be any at Duke University, North Carolina State, or UNC, or some of the other fine institutions that we have.
I want to go back to a point you made earlier, which is that Netanyahu got kind of choked up, and he asked for Israelis' forgiveness for the death of the hostages, but he hasn't changed his tactics. He's doubled down. He declared war in the West Bank, which is on the opposite side of Israel, where the settlers have been waging like terrorism against Palestinians over there. So yeah, he can make a speech, but he's not changing his stripes.
Right. Well, I just came in to give a couple of insights. I got to head to a meeting, but I did meet yesterday the Secretary of Labor, who was in North Carolina. So I got a call to meet her. She was in Charlotte. Very interesting meeting. She was there for the Harris campaign. I talked about labor and work, but really talked about the energy of the campaign. She had some good statistics about 460,000 jobs created in North Carolina, 16 million new jobs, and really focused in on that's where the message needs to be, the economy, although people are still dealing with high prices. Also had the honor of meeting Governor Tim Walz last week for about 30 minutes in Raleigh in the evening, hosting a reception for him. And that was fascinating. Saw a really different side to him. I really think he reminds me of kind of like a John Chambers, someone from a small town, really humble, really successful. I think he's connecting well to the American people. He's got some negatives with the DUI and, saying that he had weapons in a war zone. But I think all eyes are now on what's going to happen next, and we'll see what happens.
Hey, Steve,
Wait a second. The DUI was in 1995, 29 years ago.
Yeah, it was a long time.
It was a long time ago, but along those same lines of thing, I know that one of the things that they talked about, and it's been something I guess Nick has mentioned as well as other people have mentioned, is this notion of education and how much education costs. I don't know what Irene's thoughts about this are, but apparently there was a major surprise in New York City because there was a small college there where the students learned that their tuition is going to be free. So Cooper Union, which is a New York City private school, is tuition free for seniors and everything. So they learned that on the first day of classes. So is this something that we're going to see more universities doing? And is this something we need to see, where there's going to be this notion of universities being free and all along those lines? Because this, like I said, it's a small university, Cooper College, but apparently they said class is going to be, class and tuition will be free for this entire year if you are a senior at this particular university.
My daughter graduated from Parsons in New York City, and one of the choices was Cooper Union. That was like 20 years ago, and I believe Cooper Union was free 20 years ago.
Yeah, it is pretty inexpensive, but I'll also tell you, in places in Europe, there are free colleges, especially in the northern. I know, but I was telling my grandson, I'll pay for his tuition at University of Barcelona. Why? It's like $5,000 a year. That's it. Or ETH Zurich. ETH Zurich is $1,500 a year. It's the number 10th rated university in the world. Alumni includes Albert Einstein. But see, in the United States, we don't hear about European option. Now, when I was in my younger halcyon days, I went to Oxford University. Actually, it's St. Edmund's Hall at Oxford University, because as Rick knows, because your daughter's over there, there's no such thing as Oxford. It's all these different colleges.
It's like you have 30 different colleges who stick together.
Right. I was at St. Edmund's for part of my law degree training because it was less expensive for me to go to Oxford than it was the University of Miami, where I went to law school and matriculated at. So you'll see credits coming in from Oxford. You're going, what was he doing at Oxford? It's less expensive. Now, that was then. Oxford has changed. It now is expensive to go to Oxford, so you actually have to shop for the good universities over in Europe to go to. The people in the United States of America are so duped, and they got to spend a lot of money in tuition dollars here in the US, not realizing you really need to shop for your educational opportunities today. And please don't go into debt for an education.
And we would be well served to like make community colleges were started to make the first 2 years of college as close to free as they could manage.
My first 2 years were free, but here's the reason why. Back then they had CLEP tests. So I took CLEP tests and skipped the first year. And I was a junior in high school when I did this. Then they had special CLEPs, which they don't tell you about. But I dig around and look, oh, special CLEPs. I got another year. So I had 2 years in. So I went from a junior in high school to a junior in college. So I had to complete my senior year, and I graduated age 19.
Yeah, it didn't help you get a girlfriend because all of a sudden you're in college and you're a junior, but you're 18. And
I was in the MBA program at 19. But here's the problem with our education system. How did I learn this? I did it because I dug personally. What about my mentors and the high school counselors and college counselors? Did they tell me any of this? The answer was no. I had to dig all this up myself as a 17-year-old, trying to figure out how I could get through college without having to spend 4 years at an institution. So I only spent maybe 1 year, and that was about it.
Hey, Nick, just hold on a second. Really quickly, along the same lines. Go ahead, Irene, but then I had a question.
Nick, I'm on the opposite end of that spectrum. I went 4 years to a community college, and it took me 8 years to get my MBA because
I'm too lazy. I'm too lazy to do it.
My parents didn't want me to go to college. So if you want your kids to go to college, say, I don't want you to go to college. But when your undergraduate degree is in biology, it takes a long time to get to the MBA level. But
You know, the thing is, out there's an educational system, and there's a lot. It's almost like law. There's a lot of loopholes. Another loophole is Georgia. The Georgia Hope Scholarship. And everybody in the United States should know about this. If you get a 3.0 B average in high school, you get to go to all the Georgia schools free, like no kidding. So my son went to high school in North Springs and in Atlanta, got a B average, and went to Georgia Tech for free for 4 years. So he got his degree at Georgia Tech, no student loans. Then I showed him how to gaff the SAT, which
a lot of Southern. There are plenty of Southern schools who try to attract Yankees by offering full tuition scholarships.
There are people that get legacy. Hold on a second. There are people that get legacy scholarships too, because I could have had one of those if I went to Central because of my family ties to that university, but it didn't major in what I wanted to study, which was journalism and everything. So I chose not to go to that university. But I do know that there are different schools that have what amount to legacy breaks and all along those lines, which means that your parents or grandparents or others went to that university and they give you some sort of break, from my understanding, and all along those lines. So I do know that there are legacy type of scholarships. But one of the questions I was going to ask, and this is for everybody because it goes back to the politics lines and everything, is what are our thoughts around unions and the importance of unions? Because we were talking about Tim Walz earlier, and apparently Vice President Kamala Harris and Tim Walz will be visiting Pittsburgh, a very important state to deal with in terms of the being a swing state and a swing concern and all along those lines. But apparently VP Harris is joining both Trump and Biden in opposing a major merger, which is the merger between U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel, which I believe is over there in the Asian theater and everything. But what are our thoughts around these notions of mergers, and how important is this going to be as far as the union vote and in terms of supporting and getting the union vote to back you?
Yeah, well, I mean, the union votes are really important, especially in the Midwest, which we call the Taft-Hartley area, because those are the union plans that exist, at least in retirement, Mark. But the union is the only thing that can combat large corporations. Other than that, if you're an employee and you're not part of a union, you basically are cannon fodder to the large companies that are out there. So large companies, if you want to combat them of any say whatsoever, you have to have unions. And even ones that don't have unions have unions. For example, the bar associations in various states are basically a union. And the American Bar Association is basically a union. And so the thing is, it's the way that you basically can keep competition out. And so the thing is, having unions is very important, especially in an age where we have very large corporations. Now, as a shareholder, because I sit on the other side of it, I hate unions because I can't knock down the poor employees to the lowest possible denominator and wreak out big profits so I can not have to work as hard. But from an equity standpoint, you do need to have unions. So it depends on what side of the equation you're on.
My union saved my life by giving me really good medical insurance. Everything I want, I can usually call up a doctor and say, I think I need this. And I'm a hypochondriac, so some of this stuff, but I said, I wanted them to take a look inside me for no good reason. They found some. If I'd waited till there were symptoms, I'd be fucked. But my union saved my life, also maybe saved my marriage. My wife and I go to couples counseling once a month, and it's that the union pays for that kind of coverage too. Not because we're yelling and hating each other, but because it's good for a relationship to get counsel. It's like relationship push-ups.
And everything. Yeah. But let's come back to the legacy scholarships. I just looked at one of them, which is the American Legion Scholarship, and apparently they give money because next week will be the anniversary of 9/11. It'll be actually the 23rd year since that took place and everything. And apparently the American Legion's Legacy Scholarship provides college funding to children of post 9/11 veterans who died on active duty or those who have a combined VA disability rating of 50% or greater. So they definitely provide a lot of money for those people that need it if they are have that special association being associated with.
So some kids have an advantage when it comes to all this. Some kids are like Nick, and they can doggedly do the research themselves. Some kids have parents who can afford to spend, in LA now, it's $50,000 a year to go to a fancy private high school. But at the private high school, you'll get competent counseling. You can tell your counselor, tell me how to do this, and you're a paying customer. At a public high school with 3,000 students, there might be one counselor in Chicago. You're not going to get anything from there. And if another advantage is if you have two parents still married and they get along with each other, then so you can make getting into college a family enterprise where you can break up the labor so it's not fair. And the college admissions process gets crazier in America every year. The average elite student who wants to go to an Ivy probably applies to 15 colleges now.
Well, I want to come back to politics for a minute. I just wondering, do we think that there is any threat to Elizabeth Warren? Because apparently the Republicans in Massachusetts are going to pick a candidate to take on Senator Elizabeth Warren. And we know that she is seen as a darling of the liberal community and everything. But apparently Massachusetts is holding a state primary election on today to determine who will be facing her later on in the election and everything. And on the opposite side, Texas Attorney General Paxton, it says he's targeting voter registration in the state's biggest Latino county. So Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is threatening to sue Bexar County over measure to send the voter registration forms by mail. So apparently there's a whole notion about whether that's a good thing or a not good thing when it's voter registration by mail. And I think that they cleaned like 1 million people off the rolls in Texas recently and everything along those lines. So what is our take around this political maneuver that is going on a national basis?
Texas is pretty purple. It gets more purple election by election, but the corrupt leadership of Texas, the attorney general, the governor, lieutenant governor, they do voter suppression. So it's taking longer than it should for Texas to go fully purple. With Elizabeth Warren, she's beloved. And she's got an amazing neck. Whenever my wife sees her on TV, Elizabeth Warren's like 70 or 71. Her neck doesn't have a single wrinkle. And my wife is like, look at that neck. So just on the basis of her smooth neck alone, she'll get reelected.
The problem with Elizabeth Warren and same with Bernie Sanders, even though they sound really good, hey, the United States is the most rich country in the world, we're this, we're that. Their spending policies are out of control. And the thing is, what they're not honest. They're not honest people. If they were honest, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders would tell people that the United States is 35 trillion in debt on the books and 125 trillion on debt off the books, which is Social Security and Medicare unfunded liabilities. We're not the richest country in the world. We're one of the most broke countries in the world. But that's not what you hear from the Democrats. You hear, oh, we're the richest country in the world, so we're going to create this system, we're going to create this system, we're going to create this bureaucracy, that bureaucracy, and then all your problems are going to be solved because we're going to give tax breaks to the middle class, even though we can't afford it because we're so bloody broke, because we spend money like a drunken sailor. So even though Tim Walz, what do you say, got hit with a DUI, he's in the right place, being a Democrat, except he should be hit with a DUI all the time because he's just another drunken sailor in the Democratic Party.
Well, speaking of sailors and all along those lines, hey, Nick, speaking of sailors and all along those lines.
Mark, can I push back on that just a little bit?
Yeah, I think Toby, we got to hear from the progressives, baby. You're not going to let me get away with that trouncing of the Democrats.
No, it's not that. It's just that you always cite numbers but never give context. And you always tend to just, hey, numbers that you don't like, isn't that scary? But that isn't really the way it should be. You should be able to explain that, yes, these things do cost money. They are going to cost money. We're an aging society, and they're going to have to cost money. So, I mean, just saying that, Social Security is going broke, it's not really going broke. It's just how it's set up, which is what Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders are trying to fix. Yet you're saying that they aren't being honest when they're telling you that they need to be fixed. So, it's just, you got to add some more context.
Well, speaking of context, because I want to get to another thing, and I know Sasha's going to love this one, because apparently there's an unusual trial in Nick's favorite place, which is Florida, and it started today and everything, and it involves obscure candidates for local office, activist groups far outside the political mainstream, and relatively little money changing hands. But there are experts that are saying that it is showing a rare glimpse into how Russia has tried for decades to secretly influence American politics. So prosecutors say that in Russia, in relatively low-tech fashion, they sought out sympathetic groups in the United States, inviting its leaders to visit Moscow and establish a long-term relationship through calls, emails, and electronic messages. And one of the groups that is on trial now is the group called, I think it's Uhuru or something like that, and the group which has long had a presence in St. Petersburg, Florida, then promoted Russian views on its website, social media account, and radio stations. One post argued that Russian athletes should be allowed to participate in the 2016 Summer Olympics, and 4 Americans face charges that they conspired to have other U.S. citizens act as illegal agents of the Russian government, or that they acted as unregistered Russian agents themselves. The prosecutors say that the Russians directed them, and in some cases paid them, to push Russian propaganda, including after their country invaded Ukraine in 2022. And the defendants, who have pleaded not guilty, say that the U.S. government is criminalizing dissent protected under the First Amendment. All 4 of them are current or former members of the African People's Socialist Party, an organization promoting Black Power. 3 are also members of the Uhuru movement, the party's activist arm, which is based in St. Petersburg and St. Louis. So one of the defendants also founded a different group, Black Hammer, a radical Black separatist organization in Atlanta. So it looks like there's a whole conversation around self-determination and a number of other things, but they are saying that they have been bought and paid for by Russia and all along those lines. So this case ought to be an interesting case to watch, because I know that this has been something they said Russia has been doing ever since like the 50s and all along those lines. So what is our take, and what is our take from a legal standpoint, since you are the legal person, Nick, if you're still around and everything, onto this whole notion of this case that is now here that is apparently going to put Russia in the limelight?
I have no comment.
Espionage is cheap. It's so cheap to propagandize other countries, to send spies over, compared to spending, tens of billions, trillions on weapons, spying and disrupting countries, just one-on-one with infiltrators and bribes. It's super, super cheap. They're always going to do that.
I just wanted to
go back to debt for a second.
I wanted to get context to Toby because he demanded some context about Social Security. Now, to Toby, Wake Up the Progressive Broke, the woke and broke colleague that I have, This comes from the Social Security website. Social Security will pay 76% of the benefits in 2037. And that is because of the improvements they made in 1983. Fact is, if you read, this is their website, not mine. Social Security will run out of money in the year 2037. The trust fund is broke. Okay, so what's going to happen? Everybody's listening. If you're around in 2037, get ready to have your benefits cut.
Nick, you said those are the adjustments made when? 1983?
1983. And neither party is
so you're saying that Elizabeth Warren made adjustments in 1983?
No, I didn't say Elizabeth Warren did. I said.
So when we're talking, again, that's the context that I'm talking about. So when we're talking about that context again, real quick, Nick, when we're talking about that context, you just pointed out that the updates to Social Security haven't happened since 1983. We're now sitting in 2024, and people have been asking for updates in terms of raising caps and so on and so forth to make sure that we aren't still robbing Peter to pay Paul with stealing from Social Security to pay other benefits and to pay other things that aren't associated with Social Security. And these are the bills and things that both Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, even some people on the Republican side have actually pushed forward, actually changed since, as you pointed out, 1983. So the thing is, things have evolved. And when you're just throwing out words and saying that, well, the Democrats, blah, 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 or the left, or that's giving context. That's just playing some politics without trying to educate the individuals that we're trying to talk to.
Yeah, so hold on a second.
I'm not giving politics. I'm just giving you facts, Chitobi. I don't know why you're so defensive about
You
it.
said
Elizabeth Warren statement for the richest country in the world is not true.
No, hold on a second, because Toby's phone is messing up and everything, so hopefully get to a better area. But I did have a question really quickly for Sasha. At what point do we need to worry about the age of some of these spies and everything? Because apparently one of these spies that is being tried is 82 years old, and he acknowledged traveling to Russia and other countries for conferences, but he and his lawyers are denying that the defendants acted at the direction and control of Russia, saying that their acts were protected speech consistent with their political views, because apparently they're from the far left and all along those lines and everything. But I'm just going like, this man is 82 and we're going to go after him now and everything. So I just wanted your
Hey, we've prosecuted Nazis who were like 96 years old. It took 30, 40 years to catch and prosecute them. We'll put them on trial.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, there have been racists that we didn't put on trial till they were well into their 90s. And then some
like the Medgar Evers people, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
I think they were in their 90s when they got
I want to go back to debt, though, for a second, which is how we can luck out of debt. In times of high inflation, what you want to have is debt, at least if you've got if you're paying low interest on the debt, because if you owe $20,000 and because of inflation your income like triples over 5 years, that $20,000 looks like nothing. Now, according to Goldman Sachs, according to Accenture, according to all sorts of big time analysts, technology and AI will double the world's GDP in the next 25 years, which is the equivalent of inflation. If the whole world gets super rich from technology, then all the debt the U.S. has gets shrunken versus all the new wealth. And the way we take advantage of that is to have an educated population and make the U.S. the capital of AI land, of robot land, of CRISPR genetic technology land. That's the way we won the second half of the 20th century, and it's the way we can win the 21st century.
Yeah, I had a question for Irene really quickly, because I know you're political ideology and all along those lines, but I did hear an interesting article, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around it, because there is this notion that abortion and women's rights is going to be a big part of the election, not just because Kamala is running, Kamala Harris and everything, but also because of the whole notion around Roe versus Wade and some other things that have taken place. And I did see one of the articles I was looking at that said that there is a block that is very interesting, which is the man of the people that had gone through IVF systems and have gone through abortions that are also becoming seen as a critical swing vote and everything because they have a vested interest in it. So it's not just the women, but it's also the men that are working with the women in their lives that have gone through abortion or gone through IVF and a number of other things, and how that has played into their own political landscape. So I was just wondering your thoughts as to the importance of women in this upcoming election and whether that's something that you and even your husband talk about.
Well, you know, as someone who faced the choice in my younger days of whether to seek abortion or deliver a child, I sought to deliver a child, and we are Catholic, practicing Catholics, but I just feel that I'll go ahead and confess that I believe in a woman's right to choose, and that would annoy a lot of my friends, but you know, we've talked about unions and we've talked about Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. By the way, with my timeshare advocacy, the very first person I talked to worked for a resort, and he was an expert in spiritual beings and guidance, and I scheduled a thing, and he said to me, if anybody should take this timeshare industry on, it's you, because you look like Elizabeth Warren. So I went and I got new glasses, because I think sometimes Bernie Sanders and unions step over the line. And when you go too far left, that's when you get into problems. And I think with abortion, it's the same way. So when we had women who had to carry a fetus to term that that had no chance of a life in America, we went too far the other way. As far as abortion being used as birth control, I think it can get out of hand that way. So it just seems like in whatever we're talking about, we have too far left and too far right. I mean, I can hardly watch Fox or CNN anymore. That there's just nobody in the middle anymore. And while I have the stage, though, and I have all these people that are interested in politics, and it was when we first got on the show, we mentioned freedom of speech. And the reason we have freedom of speech in America, and I'd like to know if our guests know this, is found in this. Has anybody heard of this book, We the Jury?
No.
No.
Okay, well, these are the 15 most powerful court cases in history, and they're from the 1600s. Some of them, this was inspired by O.J. Simpson, but for one example was William Penn, and I don't know how many people know that Pennsylvania used to be called Sylvania. And to be a juror back then, you were kidnapped and you were sequestered, and you were not allowed food, water, or a chamber pot until you ruled what the judge wanted you to rule. And when they put William Penn on trial, everybody put up with all of that, and he moved that's what led him to Pennsylvania. But freedom of speech is a powerful thing, and all of these issues, the fact that we can even talk about them are important. But Nick, I highly recommend this book. I think you would enjoy it.
Check out and everything. Hey, just really quickly, and I'd love to hear your thoughts around this, Nick, because a friend of mine is actually looking at possibly bringing a show to our network, and all along those lines, actually a couple of friends are looking to bring shows. But one of the shows is this notion of it's kind of coming what Irene's talking about, I know sometimes we talk about justice deferred and all along those lines, and I mean that's part of the conversation around reparations. But they have this notion that some of the people that are descendants of the Salem witch trials that never really got their just dues.
They're in here. That's one of the trials.
Yep. And I just wanted your take on that and everything, because there is this notion that some people that were tried and even some people that lost their lives, that they never got their kind of justice served and everything. So is there any way that those families could possibly get some justice, even though it is centuries later and everything? Because not everybody that was convicted or thought to be a witch was actually a witch and everything. So I just wondered your notion around that idea of something as long ago as then, and is there any legal recourse for the descendants of those people?
Nick doesn't seem to be on the stage, but there were definitely people convicted that were in no way witches, and it was so long ago. And the problem is that there were not enough people. You know, if there was, what's left of that is a couple hundred people to try to get restitution from so long ago, as opposed to September 11th. And look what it took to get restitution just for people from September 11th. If it wasn't for a famous comedian that took the realm, they probably never would have gotten justice.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Hey, Rick, just really quickly along those same lines, I know that where you are, there is a governor that has declared a state of emergency because there are landslides over there and everything. So I'm just wondering, do you think that this state of emergency is a good thing? And what is your feelings just about state of emergencies during natural disasters? Because this is a natural disaster that is not.
You know, California is a huge state, and a lot of stuff happens, and we're a seismically active state, and we're talking about Palos Verdes, which is a bunch of geographically young hills that are formed by, you know, tectonic activity. And so, yeah, stuff's going to move around. It's a very expensive neighborhood, so people are tempted to build in places where maybe they shouldn't. And so, yeah, state of emergency makes sense. You get federal funds. You know, those people, you know, their houses are intact for now, but there's no way to shore up the ground under the houses, and eventually they'll start sliding away.
Yeah, definitely. That'll be interesting how that goes and everything along those lines. Hey, Sasha, I deferred one of those conversations to you earlier, but I'll defer it again. What is your take on what's going on with the negotiations there in Israel and Hamas? I understand the teachers union chief, Randy Weingarten, is saying that Israel's Netanyahu is to blame for the Hamas murdering those folks and all along those lines, and Hamas is threatening to kill hostages, and they are saying that that could weaken the group's hand in negotiations. And of course, there are those protests that we had talked about. I think that was yesterday that we brought those up and everything. But what is your take on what is going on currently in Israel? I know you had your show earlier about Ukraine, so we covered part of that during that show, but I definitely want to hear your thoughts about what's happening.
United States has announced a long time ago that they are not negotiating with terrorists. And I don't understand why anybody would, in his right mind, believe that it's Netanyahu who killed these 6 hostages. How Netanyahu could do it? How did he know that they're there? Did he have a gun in his hands and went quietly and killed one by one? It's crazy. You cannot negotiate with terrorists. All you have to do, you have to kill them. By now, I'm sorry to say, really, I don't want to offend anybody, but assume, please, get real. There are no hostages alive. And even if one will be alive, it will be a great miracle. But it's not going to happen. They're all practically dead. Even if somebody is not dead today, he will be dead in half an hour, maybe in a day, maybe in a week or so. So stop doing it. You cannot do 2 things. You want to destroy terrorists and at the same time save hostages. It's just impossible to do. You can't do it. I'm sorry. It's almost a year since the attack. So hundreds of people were killed. hundreds of people were taken hostages. Of them, I don't know, today, I would be surprised if more than 10 are still alive, and probably even less so. Just forget about it. Try to save if it's possible, but to make it a main goal, you cannot take all country of Israel, try to release and to save this bunch of hostages, 10 hostages, 20 hostages, I don't know the number, but you cannot keep 10 million people of Israel being hostages to that. Just forget it. That's a reality. But I don't know if somebody can say so, but that's what it is. And you have to call a spade and stop hiding. You have to go all in attack and destroy all this Hamas, all the terrorists, get things sorted out in the West Bank, it's still possible, and get on with your life. Stop doing all this garbage show.
I mean, West Bank is
I don't think there's the last deal that had Hamas release hostages and return for a ceasefire was back in 2023. I don't think there's been a deal at all this year, even though various people at various times announced we're almost there.
But I mean, there's been a whole conversation, even to what
Just to point out real quick, the reason there hasn't been a deal to release hostages since what you were talking about, Rick, is because the deals have been nixed because Netanyahu is doing exactly what Sasha's asking him to do, which is just basically forget about the hostages and kill whomever he wants to, which is wrong. The foremost focus should be one, protection, should be releasing of the hostages, should be bringing to justice Hamas, yes. However, we have to protect also the Palestinian people. But that's not what's being done. What's being done is exactly what Sasha's saying. Just go ahead and kill everybody. That's not what should happen.
Remember what's happened in Second World War? First, there was...
You bring up the Second World War, but we're not in the Second World War.
I'm talking now. First, there was unconditional capitulation of Germany. Second, there was a Nuremberg process, and much more than one. There were several different Nuremberg processes. That's what happened here. First of all, Hamas has to capitulate if they're still alive. If they're not alive, that's great. If they're still alive, you have to capitulate, release the hostages. If there are still any, I don't believe so. But
how do you get them to capitulate?
So what you're actually saying is not what's going on.
How do you get them to capitulate?
But the thing is, what you guys are saying capitulation and all these other words is not what is actually the real situation. The reality of the situation is there are negotiations between these Muslim nations and the Netanyahu government. The Netanyahu right-wing government does not want to negotiate. And so we're sitting here in a position where you can bring up World War II and talk about capitulation and all this. No, there were deals on the table that got nixed because of Netanyahu, and he's trying to appease the people because his government will fall apart. So we're in a situation where this is why the Israeli people, there are millions of Israeli people in the streets of Israel protesting due to the fact that they want a ceasefire. They want the hostages released. There was a deal on the table that they want Netanyahu to take. It's not Netanyahu's not doing what the people of Israel are even asking him to do. So right now, we're talking about...
Do you think that the Israeli people, though, just want to blame someone?
No, the Israeli people want the stuff to stop. They have already said they're blaming Hamas. But at this moment, when Netanyahu is the one who's nixing deals, and he's already stated that he's not going to do a deal, the Israeli people are mad at Netanyahu for not taking the deals, rightfully so, or at least negotiating to try and push for a deal, because he has declined a deal. So therefore,
but do we know what the deals are? The details of the deals?
I don't think we know the details.
Everyone,
one of the details that we heard is West Bank, and even there's a notion that I've heard West Bank being even mentioned as part of a two-state solution. I know there are people, I think including Sasha, that have said that is not realistic and everything. I personally do not agree with that because I think that there is ways that can be done. I haven't figured them out. I'm not going to claim that I figured them out and everything, but I have heard people use West Bank as part of this negotiation around a two-state solution and everything, and I think that was part of what was.
Excuse me, you're so mixed up. Please stop for a second. Don't get so mixed up and carried away. Here's what's happened. Right now, West Bank is not part of any negotiations. Negotiations now between Hamas and some Arab countries and United States and Israel. Number two, Netanyahu.
Actually, the West Bank is part of it,
Please
Sasha.
stop.
Sasha, the West Bank is part of it. Netanyahu has actually made it there. That is
Just
part of the problem.
close your mouth and just listen, okay?
I'm trying to help you out with facts.
Okay,
I'm not
bye-bye.
trying to do everything.
Bye-bye.
All I'm just trying to
Not
point
gonna
out,
be on the same-
Netanyahu put that on the table.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Like I said,
The tough part about discussion, the tough part about having a discussion around this is people really, there is a lot of passion in this, which is understandable. But the thing is, we have to have a discussion around it and understand that there are certain things that have been put on the table. Like Netanyahu, we have to be honest about it. He did put West Bank on the table, which was non-negotiable. There were problems in terms of Israeli settlements and in both West Bank and in Gaza. But again, what's going on right now, bringing up World War II doesn't help the situation. What we need to look at is, okay, how can we move forward peacefully to get to a ceasefire, to bring individuals to justice, to do all this extra stuff?
Yeah, along those same lines, and I could be wrong, but I thought that I had heard somewhere, correct me if I'm wrong, Rick and Jadovi, and even Irene, if you know, but I thought that I had heard Qatar and Sweden discuss some of the Gaza Strip and West Bank as being part of this notion of what could be a solution as part of the deal and everything. Because I thought that I had heard them.
I don't know. All I know is that in the last 24 hours, Netanyahu did a briefing on the war, which showed Israel, which showed that the West Bank had been erased, and as it was no longer a political entity, which is that's not a mistake. That's not something you could do by mistake. So Netanyahu, in a way, seems to be doubling down.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question and express my ignorance? Why is Palestine not deserving of a state?
They are. They've had crappy political leadership since Israel, and even before, since Israel became a nation in 1948. There was a referendum in Palestine about that, and they voted it down. And they've had just crappy, corrupt, terrorist, often leadership since then.
It's partially the leadership, but it's also, just to answer your question, Irene, I think that some people take certain sayings and they take it too far. I know that if Sasha was here, he would probably say that I'm being a little appeasing and everything, but there's this notion of to the river from the sea, and even Netanyahu himself has used that phrase as well. But there are some people that take that to literally mean that everybody that is in the Muslim community wants to literally destroy Israel, and I don't think that that is the viewpoint of every Muslim. I don't even think that that's the viewpoint of the majority of Muslims.
And from my perspective, Irene,
go ahead.
I was just going to say you're spot on. They are deserving of self-determination. They are deserving of their own state to live in peace, because that is the ultimate end game, I think, because that gives both parties, the Israeli individual or the Israeli people and the Palestinian people, that dignity of having their own place that they can call home. But right now we're at a position where people are attacking that. People want that whole area because it was based on religious ideologies and other histrionics and stuff. It's just a battle against it. But you're right. They do deserve their own state. They do deserve their own place.
But what about the illegal settlements, though, with the Israelis?
The illegal settlements in the West Bank is just pure Israeli aggression against the people who've lived there for thousands of years. I mean, not pure, but like 95% Israelis effing with the with the Palestinians who live on the West Bank. So yeah, the Palestinians deserve self-determination, but they've never had leadership in modern times that has really had that as their primary focus, because they feel, and they've got justification in feeling this, that Israel swiped their land. Now,
Well, it is. Oh, I was just going to state, I think, well, because my phone kind of died in the middle of when you were talking about the illegal settlements. That's why. That's a lot of the reason why we're in the middle of the wars up there, because the Palestinian people are being, their land is being taken. They were supposed to have a particular area, and that is being taken by Israeli settlements coming in. There are plenty of documentation on, the Palestinian people living at the bottom of basically hotels, or the Israeli people, the people that are settled in that area, tossing bottles down into this gated area where beneath are the Palestinian people. There are areas where, if there's just a land mass, like an empty area, and Israeli people, there are some Israeli individuals who've gone and just set up shop and said, this is Israeli land now. Well,
what I've heard is they say, it doesn't matter what the treaty was about. We answer to God.
Well,
exactly.
The West Bank settlers are right-wing, though, like we might consider them, they're like Israel's MAGAs. They're highly religious. They are highly aggressive. They're right-wing. But the deal is, for the last 100 years, more than 100 years, the Palestinians have felt screwed over, because this was land that was jointly occupied, or that was Palestinian. A lot of it was Palestinian land, though, this kind of stuff has been going on for thousands of years, hundreds of years under British rule, colonial rule. And then the Brits left and the other colonial powers left and drew arbitrary lines, which pissed everybody off. So the Palestinian leadership has never had the attitude, all right, well, we're just going to take what they're leaving us, we'll suck it up, we'll try to be, good citizens and make this our little area of land, which is, 100.
I know we're going to wind down, but unfortunately,
all right. So, but anyway, that was never their sole concern. They were also concerned with revenge and wiping out Israel. So you got a-holes on both sides.
No, I agree with that, and that's part of the problem, and that's been going on for decades, because that's only one of several conflicts in the world that has been taking place forever. I mean, England and Ireland have been at each other's throats for years. Over in Eritrea and Ethiopia have been at each other's throats for years, and there have been a number of these that are global conflicts that don't seem to have a true solution. I also don't know about the power of the certain forces and everything, because even if you, and that's what I was going to ask Sasha before he got off, but even if you look at what was supposed to be in an arrest, because definitely Mongolia was supposed to have arrested Putin and everything, but they did not want to get in that political quagmire, so they chose not to jump into the middle of that, even though technically there is a warrant and he was supposed to be arrested when he made the appearance in Mongolia, but they were like, no, that's all right, this is a political quagmire that I think they don't want to deal with. But what are your thoughts on that as we get ready to get out of here, Rick? Because I was somewhat surprised, but not overly surprised, that they did not choose to arrest him.
They've got a huge border with Russia. Russia, has a big army. They've got a ton of nukes. They didn't want to piss off Russia.
Right. They didn't want to piss off the giant tiger that's out in front of their backyard and everything along those lines. So
it's not like Putin is the one guy who's prosecuting this war. Right. He's got a bunch of people under him with the same attitude. If they, essentially kidnapped Putin in the name of justice, I'm sure all the people under Putin, whoever became leader in absentia, would do bad stuff to Mongolia.
Yeah, I can definitely see that and everything. We're going to end this. I'm glad Irene was able to join, and I hope she'll join investment show tomorrow and all along
Thank
those
you.
lines. Maybe even some of our other shows, but definitely glad to have you on. I know we're going to have a show around education that Mama Noni does, which is from the Saint Sia Academy. So she'll talk about some of the ancient history of some of the African lands and all along those lines. So she's actually doing that as a pre-record. So the show should be running in about a minute and everything. But right now we're going to get on out of here. And we'll have some more World Edition on tomorrow and everything.
Bye.